I used to hate getting up at this time, but now I love it. I often crave solitude while living in a big city. Sometimes just firing up the coffee and getting outdoors early is the best way for me to find something I like to call a healthy escape. I feel like for so long in my life, the only thing I did was go for unhealthy escapes. And even that word escape kind of feels like it has a bad name attached to it. But I'm a firm believer that you can flip things around and find healthy ways to kind of help you deal with your problems in life. Because let's face it, we all have moments that get really difficult, and sometimes it's nice to have a little distraction. As I've gotten older, I really appreciated these quiet moments to be able to get outside and just kind of reflect and think about where I want to go in my life. Sometimes living in Phoenix can get a little difficult just because you're surrounded by so many people, so much traffic, so much noise. That you forget there's a greater world around you with so much things to see. And so by getting up, getting outside, walking around, and having time for these thoughts, I feel like it's a lot easier just to ease into my days and just kind of see a lot of that beauty around me that I often overlook. Plus, I made a new little friend. Quite a few years ago, when I was still living in the Midwest, I got a job as an assistant loan officer at a company. And as part of this, what we did is we had 2 weeks in a training class, and I think there were about 15 of us in there to study for this licensing exam so we could take a test at the end and end up passing it. In that group of people, I ended up befriending one of the guys in there. His name was Paul. Paul was in his early to maybe mid 40s or so, and I was in my early 20s. But we had a lot in common and we had a lot of similar perspectives and things in life. So I thought he was a great guy and I enjoyed spending time with him. A couple times we'd go out, grab dinner or lunch and stuff like that, and just sit and talk about life. And one occasion, I remember us getting on the subject of smoking. And he knew that I smoked at the time. And when we talked about this, he kind of eventually got to the point of saying something to me like, I used to do the same thing, but no matter how you try to justify it at the end of the day, it's nothing more than an escape. And at the time, I didn't tell him this, but I was thinking in my head, I was like, man, yeah, right. That may be you, but I can handle it. It's me. It helps my life. I started thinking about all the ways that I told myself that it helped me, or so I thought. It wasn't until many years later when I was living in California and I took a trip down to Texas at one point. And on this trip, I didn't bring anything with me because I didn't want to get in trouble going through the airline. But I also made the decision at the time where I was like, you know what? I kind of don't really want to smoke anymore. I was focusing on health, fitness, and I was running a different Instagram page where I was doing fitness stuff. So I really wanted to lean fully into that. It was tough for a couple of weeks as I had to kind of get over some of the withdrawal symptoms and things. But once I did, I remember having this level of clarity that I hadn't had in a long, long time. Really, maybe ever. It was at those times where I started to kind of realize that it was numbing, right? I was okay being bored. There were issues and things in my life, in my relationship, my goals, all kinds of stuff that I had avoided addressing. And I feel like every time I got close to thinking about these things, I would just smoke and I wouldn't think of it and I would just move past it and stuff too. So it wasn't until I stopped that I realized he had a point, it felt like it was an escape and it was the best way to go ahead and describe what that was. And it made me start thinking about a lot of the things in my life. When I was younger, I really took a liking to movies, and I still like movies a lot too. I would particularly gravitate towards sci-fi movies and things because it felt like, to some version of the same word, it felt like an escape too, where I could just turn my brain off for a couple hours, immerse myself into a different world, and I felt like I could escape my life, my problems, and other things that seemingly just always followed me around. Later on, as I got older, that's when I got into smoking, and then I got into drinking. And then when I stopped drinking, I went back to smoking. It was always something in my life that got me out of my situation mentally and put me somewhere else. I think movies, looking back on things, that's still one of my escapes that I like, and that's why I like cinematic type stuff, or I look for shots and stuff, because to me it's something that reminds me of when I was younger. But as the years go on, it's like I got a little bit away from that stuff and I got into those other bad habits, which was smoking and drinking. That was just an escape. A lot of times, when I think about this channel and the point of why I make these videos, it's because I think to some version of this, it's like I try to find a way to provide an escape, still for myself, but also for other people that watch this, because maybe people don't have access to places like this where you can just kind of detach from things too. I see people all around that use things to escape in their life. Some people eat, some people smoke, some people drink, some people gamble. There's so many unhealthy escapes, but there's also healthy ones too. So a lot of what I try to do here is try to do the opposite of what I've done before, which is to provide a healthy escape. And it's healing for me, and hopefully it is for the people on the other side of the screen too. It was about 10 years ago. In 2016, that's when I had that conversation with Paul, and it's 2026 now. So it took me about 10 years to really get to the point of accepting this. There have been times throughout those years where I stopped smoking, started smoking, stopped smoking, started smoking. I kept going back and forth because I'd make it to a certain point, but then I'd give back in because life caught up and it was really difficult for me. I think it's really tough to kick a habit of anything, really. And I think a lot of us struggle in life, and it's hard, whether it's financially, relationship, anything. It can really be any myriad of things that are going on in your life that make things stressful. And I think it's very easy to look towards some form of escape that takes you out of these problems so that we don't have to address them, and we can avoid those instead. I'm at the point in my life now where I've hit a couple low points before, and it made me realize, like, if you keep running from things in your life, they're eventually going to catch up. You can't run away so far that your things will not catch up to you eventually. And so instead of kicking the can down the road, I've decided to try and face things and do it in a healthier way, which is trying to find an escape throughout getting out to nature and enjoying this world around me, rather than trying to clock myself out of it mentally instead.
I don't think the point is to have all the answers, but I do think it's important that we find ways to face our issues and troubles in life rather than find ways to just run away from them. It doesn't mean you can't find healthy escapes to be able to disconnect and get your thoughts right, so that way you're better equipped to kind of go and face these things. At least that's what I've been thinking recently. Whether you decide to get outside like me or do something entirely different, I don't think it matters really as much. As long as you're working towards a healthy escape instead of the unhealthy ones out there, I think you're headed in the right direction. Anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate every single one of y'all, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.